So welcome to the Open Humans Community Call on June 9th. Today, Bastian's not able to make it, and we have a smaller crowd, and the agenda is kind of open-ended. I do have an update that I want to share regarding our Jupyter Hub notebooks and voila, that have been updated. And then beyond that, maybe we'll do a go around of people being invited to share things that they've done in Open Humans or Quantified Flu in particular, and maybe like questions or things that they wish or issues they ran into with what they're doing. It's really nice to hear what people are actually doing versus like what's theoretically out there, because it gives us a better sense of like what's of interest and what people run into. Let's do a brief go around where people just like say hi and introduce themselves. Try to keep yourself to a sentence or two. We'll have like an open discussion later. So hi, I'm Mad. I'm Executive Director of Open Humans. And I'll pass the ball to Morgan.
Yeah, hi, I'm Morgan, and I'm a neuroimager calling today or joining, representing NeuroTechX. And yeah, looking forward to learning more.
Do you want to pass the ball to a next person?
Pass the ball to Sam.
Hey, I'm a first-year med student from New York, actually. I told Bastian I was really interested in data science, so he introduced me to this community. I haven't done that much. I'm here to watch and learn.
And after Sam, maybe Gary?
Hi, I'm Gary. I'm the founder of Quantified Self and a board member of Open Humans, and I'm working on getting my geolocation data into Open Humans and making sense of it.
Adrian? Okay, maybe Dave.
Hi, I'm Dave Blackwell. I'm interested in atrial fibrillation. I'm also interested in vitamin D3 and zinc glucotinate to fight the COVID flu. I have done my 23andMe reports and sent them to third parties like NutraHacker, Livewello, Promethease. I've also joined self-decode reports for a while. I'm no longer on those, but I can show you those too if anyone's interested. Next, Adrian. I think he forgot.
Maybe he had to step away.
Right.
So with that, I will move to sharing the updates on the notebooks. So Tim Head was able to spend some time this weekend to update our Jupyter Hub deployment to a newer version, which was necessary to be able to run stuff that we were really interested in, like voila. And you're going to be like, what's that? What are all these words? So this has to do with the notebooks stuff that we have that enables people to create and share code that runs on their personal data, and then other people can run it. And one of the things that we've recognized with this process is that Jupyter notebooks, if you've ever seen them, are this combination of code plus the visualizations and output. And that can be, even though you don't, in theory, need to know the code at all to run the notebook, it's still in just enough for someone who's not a programmer to be off-putting. And you're like, you open it up and you can tell someone, oh, just hit shift enter lots of times. And they're like, well, this looks scary. I see lots of like letters I don't understand. And so that's where voila comes in. It's just a different view on the same notebook, which hides the code and puts it into a nice visual format. And I've done very little to explore it other than hit the button. There's also been updates to packages and stuff. So Richard Sprague had complained that the R was totally out of date, which it was like 2 years out of date. So now it's not so totally out of date. And he was able to make a quick notebook. So I'm going to do a screen share and run through some of these new features and how you can see them. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the new features here is a new button here. So this is the Exploratory. The Exploratory is a site separate to the notebook servers that Bastian's made to sort of be able to share and explore available notebooks that other people have shared, and based on sort of the data types that those notebooks use. And when you click through on them, you can see something that looks like a preview of what the notebook looked like for the person that created it. So this is as run on Richard's data, what it looked like. And so if I want to run this notebook on my own data, now I have 2 button options, and we can change the language on these buttons, but the run notebook option now goes to a voila version so that it doesn't give you the code. And I'm going to try that, and we're going to see how that looks. It looks like, can you see the circle turning? It says it's executing. I'm a little worried the screen share is off here. I can see a box. Okay, there. Can you see the circle? Okay, see, okay. And it's done. Okay, so this is it run on my data. So to review, that's Richard's graph and my graph. So my resting heart rate his resting heart rate's gotten worse, although I got to say it started much lower than mine. So, and mine has, I don't know, apparently gotten better or steady recently. What's fun to look at in this graph is when I looked at this earlier with Sebastian, he's like, is that your trip to Europe in the fall? And so we're looking at this big spike, and I mean, that's really high. 80? No, it didn't go up to 80. That's my resting heart rate. That was just after the trip. So in theory, it's easier to go west, right? Because I go back to California. And I came back on the 2nd, but then I do remember I had to go back to Charlotte like 4 days after. I had 4 days, and I went back to a meeting. So it does have to do with a lot of travel and a lot of jet lag. So that's that graph there. And then the last couple of days, you can see my resting heart rate has actually gone quite low, and I don't know why, except I've not been sleeping well, but I wake up feeling really well rested. So that's like, and I look at the resting heart rate, and I'm like, is that tricking me? Is it making me think I had more sleep than I actually had because I feel good? That's pure anecdote there, but that's my graph. So that's the voila view. If you looked at the code view of this, I'm sure that you would see something like this. You would see all this R stuff, which you can still use and edit and run, except I can't do R at all, except probably like, you know, I don't understand R at all. What are these percent signs? Sorry, I'm a Python person. And you can still run and edit the code and probably break it, but you know, I can make minor edits like changing that. Like changing the title on a graph. That's probably not going to break it. So that's the notebooks. And so we'd like to invite you to try running old notebooks again and to let us know if anything is broken. I'm going to stop screen share. Because we've updated all the packages, it means inevitably maybe something has broken, right? Because it was written under the old disk images. And you know, you're welcome to create notebooks and please share them, but also let us know if stuff's broken, if it's not working, because especially Bastian's authored a lot of these notebooks, and he's probably quick to fix them, but he just doesn't go and run them himself to check them. Any questions? There's another notebook that Bastian shared that was like a geolocation notebook that I put in the meeting notes. I tried running it, and it's very slow for me to run because I have too much geolocation data, I guess. And all it does is show one very hot spot in San Diego because I don't move. So, but that's another example of another data type that you can look at that you can't see it in the preview, but if you run it, you'll see like a map, and there's an interactive map where you can drag it and zoom in and stuff. Yeah,
Somebody
any questions?
Matt.
Hi, Leobov, and not Bastian, Sebastian.
Hello.
So folks are welcome to say like a sentence or two to intro and say hi, since we want a chance for people to introduce themselves. Leobov, you want to say hi? Well, I think she did. And Sebastian.
You mean to say hi or to say what?
Like a bit about yourself, like a sentence or two.
Yeah, of course, yes. So I'm a researcher also at the Center of Research Interdisciplinarity where Bastian is. And I also have one project with Open Humans, which is more on researchers' travels, which is now due to COVID is blocked. So we are now also trying to see other ways, right, of investigation of how people are traveling. And so for geolocation notebooks, we actually have on GitHub, on my GitHub, for some geolocation notebooks, and I would be happy to share them if Bastian didn't maybe use something from there. So I would be happy to do that. Thanks.
That sounds fun and sounds great. Yeah, and Bastian's not here because he has a meeting conflict with the Open Bioinformatics Foundation, which he's on the board of.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for being late a bit for the meeting.
No,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yep.
And is this Sebastian Treger?
Yes, so Sebastian joins us at the Paris Hack Night.
Okay.
So-
Thanks.
so
Yeah,
say
welcome.
hi for him.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm sorry Bastian's not here, but he's
Yeah.
usually here.
Sorry, I just like
Yeah,
want to set up my laptop and plug it. So, and I have some internet connection trouble today and yesterday, so might unplug me at some time. So you're just taking around. I just arrived, so I don't know. You're just going around and everybody's presenting himself.
We earlier had everyone introduce themselves with a sentence or two, so we're giving you a chance to say hi.
Okay.
I think Morgan's given a brief intro. So
Okay. So
don't feel.
basically, I'm doing machine learning and deep learning, organizing some research challenge around this. And yeah, I'm deeply also involved in a nonprofit organization dedicated to citizen science here in Paris. And yeah, that's more or less what I'm doing and interested in. I'm deeply interested in application of this citizen science and machine learning and deep learning into healthcare and neuroscience also. So that's why I know and how I know Morgan.
It's great to have you here. Have you ever had a chance to meet Bastian?
Just heard about him yesterday, but didn't know him before.
Okay. Well, hopefully you'll. I mean, you are in theory nearby, I guess. So hopefully you'll have a chance to talk more.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure. And I heard like we are also connected to this more or less the same network. So yeah, I'm pretty sure we'll interact at some point.
So great. I think the rest of our agenda is to kind of do an open-ended go around, but I wanted to check if there's any questions about the notebooks stuff, or is that it? That. And then if there's no further questions about the notebooks, I think I'll start like call on Morgan because you said you had questions like about Open Humans, and so let's hear them.
Yeah. So thanks again, and so it was great to have Bastian give a kind of overview of the project and really how Open Humans has helped other projects, and getting groups, interest groups together and giving them the tools to move forward. And so I wanted to pass on some questions from John Griffiths, who joined us yesterday but wasn't able to join this morning, who's a professor at University of Toronto. And we had a couple questions just about, is there a good example of using the API to upload data in the kind of most minimal fashion? So something we could get started with, or some best. What do you point people to as an intro, and what we would yeah, I mean, and I guess other examples of uploading time series data to I'm trying to paraphrase the question as I read it here. So, you know, what I think Bastian talked yesterday about someone maybe working on getting their ECG data uploaded. That somebody had like maybe a 6-channel ECG device that they were
Gary
working with.
does.
And so does
Gary's-
Dave.
Is it?
Yeah, Dave and I
Oh
both
yeah,
have
Gary and Dave both have the same device
Okay.
here.
Okay. Hey, what's the manufacturer?
Cardia. Kardia.
I love this. It's synchronous, like sharing of devices.
Yeah. Okay. And so do you have that, anyway, I mean, just to list the questions, you know, in many ways, you know, adding this data, which is just a 4-channel EEG device, would be, you know, very similar to an ECG, right? And certainly some of the best resources that physionet.org is one of the best resources for finding open data sets that you can currently play with. Oh, hey, awesome.
Gary, does Cardia have a raw data export?
No. So unfortunately, Morgan, this isn't going to be a great example, I don't think, for what you want to do. And I suspect that you're particularly interested in this kind of high density time series data, given.
Well, I mean, so for this project, as a NeuroTechX person, no.
Okay.
In that this is you know, just 2 electrodes here, 2 here, and
what's the sampling rate?
Oh, I mean, I think again, I don't actually know these devices very well,
But I
but
mean,
like maybe like 200 hertz or something like that.
Okay.
And the experiments are pretty short in that I think you usually go for maybe like a 5-minute run. You know, whereas like research devices, I'll be at, you know, kilohertz sampling from 128 or 256 channels, right? Like very different. But this is doable in terms of you know, a pretty small payload or, you know, upload.
So a question that I don't know the answer to, but if Matt would answer it or somebody does know, I think it would benefit me too. I just experimented with defining a new data type on Open Humans, and I just gave it a title, you know, and saw it appear on the list. And I wasn't actually sure what to do next. But I assume, and Matt, you can correct me, that what Morgan will need to do is to define a data type. And what do we do to put new data types into Open Humans?
Right. Broadly speaking, I think there's 2 ways that data can be uploaded. There's a self-upload of a file, and then there's data, you join an activity, and the activity is adding the data into the account for you. So we have things like Fitbit data collectors where you go and you auth the Fitbit, and then this like little app goes and collects your Fitbit data and then deposits it into the Open Humans account for you. And so I'm not sure which one you were asking about, like whether you wanted to know, do you know which one you were asking about, or you're interested in both?
Well, I mean, so certainly, I mean, I know John and others are, you know, interested to get this going as quickly as possible, you know, to get people collecting data. And so the easiest thing to do would obviously be save a file to your own disk and then upload it, right? And then it's pretty clear, yeah, you know. The cool thing about our, you know, the project you can find on NeuroTechX's GitHub, which is EEG Notebooks, is that we're using Jupyter Notebooks already. Like I know that in itself doesn't solve everything, but as they also encourage a kind of separation, we've got components that we could, you know, that we talked a little bit with Bastian about in terms of we could kind of integrate this in, and you know, the browser could collect the data, and you know, which means that the server could be collecting the data and saving it to, you know, S3 or you know, to AWS or wherever.
Yeah, so that more complicated stuff is that more activity app thing.
Gotcha.
So the simple upload stuff, I've added some links into the meeting notes here. There's this upload .openhumans.org site that's like an activity that we created that enables the self-upload of a file. And one of the things that we try to do in Open Humans is somehow structure this like, so to ask people to classify things according to data type. And the data types themselves is an open-ended thing where you can register a new data type. So, so what you'd want to do is, so if maybe I should I screen share, or is it?
Please.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the screen shares.
Okay, hopefully this works. Can you see here? And
Yep.
so going here to the upload page, I've already logged in. So once you've logged in, that connects it to your Humans account. And I recognize that in theory, this could be on the main site, but like for modularity reasons, it's right now written as an activity. So I think maybe Gary had added button presses. I added like iMood journal export, and that's the data type. And when you click upload this data type, it brings you to a form. You can put an optional description. And there's some information here about getting this data. So this is like information related to this data type, which is the iMood journal export. So on there's a link here, go to data types management, which is on the main Open Humans site, where you can see all of the data types that are listed. Not all of these are marked as uploadable. So if you want to add a data type that's uploadable, you create add data type, specify parent or not. It can be like a brute. Mark it as uploadable, give a name, brief description. And then this details section is markdown formatted. And that's what you see when someone loads this. So if you want to add information about how to get the data, the structure of the data, like this field is the place to do it in the details field. And so you can see this is very open-ended right here, because there's so many different types of files people could choose to upload. And what we tried to do is build the minimal, like some minimal, and it could get get better designed, but some minimal system for people to self-define these and add them as needed.
Sure. So we could do two data types, and one being a CSV file, right? That has, you know, essentially the time series, and we could add a second data type that is looking for, say, a JSON file that has kind of metadata. In this case, what we need to add is what was the experiment? Like, what were you seeing when you collected this time series data? And we use a Python package called PsychoPy, which does the presents the pictures or presents the sounds, or and does it and writes out its own little file, JSON that gives you that metadata that allows you to better interpret the time series data. So we kind of need those.
So for you, is you want like a pair of files. Like
yeah. I mean, and would you put that under a parent, or like is that
right? So this is free form, and another thing you might do is just create a very simple web app that structures it, and then it's according, and it says like upload this file, upload that file, and then it deposits it into Open Humans associated with the activity. That more structured process, rather than expecting someone to go through the file uploader twice and do each one.
Now that you say that, I think there's another project that I could reuse that would basically give me that. So a web app that already accepts what they call bids, which is this structured structured format that it gives you a directory that has the time series data plus the JSON files, and in a standard form. That actually would be even better to say that we support BIDs.
So
But
if
yeah.
you have one of the things we did do to enable simple web apps that deposit data is there's a Python library and also a Django library if you're using Django to make it pretty easy, hopefully much easier to just set up authorization to connect to Open Humans and then adding data. Rather than having to get into the raw requests.
I see. So if we would run a server that basically is accepting the data and passing it to Open Humans. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It might be able to, yeah, it might be possible. It is possible, I think, to do client-side tricks with this too.
Okay.
And
But no,
easy
that's cool too. I mean, some of this, or you know, I can outline these options and see also, you know, like, you know, it also is going to somewhat come down to the expertise that we have available.
Yeah, and I invite people to use our Slack to ask highly technical questions. Like,
okay, cool.
Please feel free to do that.
And I'm just looking at what John sent, and yeah, I think that that answers the questions in terms of, you know, I know enough that I can certainly put together some examples, and you know, again, we've got some example data sets that we can try playing with, and yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think you can see in the stuff I showed you that there's this, they were trying to balance flexibility versus structure in all these steps. And so I don't think we have any strong opinions on what the data should look like, except to say that Open Human stores files and tries to store like information about where the files came from and what they're considered to be classified as.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna make a push for bids, just because I think that I can already point people to a document that says this is what it should look like, and it's very it's not you know, like your uploads, it's very broad, but it's just meeting a certain sufficiency in terms of describing what's in the data so that you can actually do the processing. Because if not, then you're just gonna have a lot of time series data, and which, yeah, that won't.
Right, you need to, so, I should add that there is a JSON metadata field that you can put directly into Open Humans. So I don't know how big your metadata is. If it's
not
just
big.
Okay, like if you read the documentation, I did add a link to the API stuff. And so that would at least attach it directly to the file that it's relevant to.
Okay.
So
Because
that may be of interest.
That's basically, I mean, that's what BIDS is trying to do by just using directories, is saying like, oh, you know, the JSON files in the same directory as the time series data. So it's the, you know, it's the metadata.
Yeah, you'll see that
simple.
in the Open Humans data, like it's stored in the database attached to the file. There is a metadata field for this in our database, and that can be used as you want. I think that the metadata has 2 required fields, which is like tags and description. And there's one that there's some with reserved meanings, like MD5, creation date, start date, end date. But then you can use it in whatever way you want beyond that.
And if I want, I mean, so I'm just on the create page, or the create. Would I, to get us started, to make it clear, you know, would I create a project? You know, and what does that do in terms of creating a project?
I think you'd create an OAuth 2 type project that would enable you to have, it's essentially an app. We're working towards moving towards language that calls these activities.
Okay.
Mad, would you share your screen? I think this is a really great moment because this is really like a user moment here, right? Like somebody is like, I'm ready to start. What is my first thing to do? And I want to be able to answer those questions too, so as well as you.
Okay.
So
can you see this? So if you go to the create page, here, I think there's like a learn more about projects, and so there's an overview and some video I made a long time ago trying to encourage people to do this. And we're moving towards changing this language. So we have activities here, and I'm sorry, like the language change is like a work in progress. And it says note, they were previously called projects. The reason we made that distinction is there's also like self-research projects, there's very individual projects. These are group activities. And like, so if you want something that other people can use, that's going to involve like adding data to their account or getting access to data from their account, this is the thing to do, and sends messages to people using it. These are the ways to do it. So OAuth 2 projects are something where you're running an accounts-based website or a phone app. Like these are more appropriate if you're technically inclined, that sort of thing, because it involves an authorization using tokens and stuff. But that's necessary to do full automation. With on-site projects, your automation is going to be limited to a token that expires after 24 hours, because after telling people not to put it in their Git repositories, they still put it in their Git repositories. So if you want full, it's like, so recognizing that doesn't work, that right now, de facto, if you have the competence to create an OAuth 2 project, then we're going to feel like you have the competence to have tokens that last. And so that's more about OAuth 2 projects is where I'm clicking here. And there's a bunch of features, a lot of which are shared with the on-site projects, but some of them are the full automations. There's some links here to the Django library and the API library. And so if you're already using a Django stack, what you do is just use this to like get the authorization link and already have pre-made like endpoints where the person comes back and gets off the authorization, and you have access to the token, then you can now use it to do stuff. So so hopefully it simplifies the processes. So some information about data upload here. So OAuth 2 data upload. I think it's more robust actually to use the large file upload. The simple upload has the limitation that it's uploading directly to Heroku, and it's going to have a 30-second timeout if it's a really big file. And so if you're using the Python package has uploaded the more complicated, I put quotes around it, multi-step large file upload. But of course, if you're using the library, it's all just like, you know, simple to write because you're writing one line either way. Because the library is handling that for you. But and when you upload data, here's instructions on what it should look like. You got the token, file name, and then the metadata field that I was telling you about. And that metadata field, there's information on the metadata format up here. And sort of reserved meanings, validation. So it should have at least this much, and reserved meanings for these fields.
So Matt, how do I know my project is created? Like, what is the action I take, and then I'm like, okay, my project is created, and I'm on my way.
So if you create, I forget where it takes you. So overview, more about OAuth 2 projects. Does it say like create a project? Shouldn't it say? You're
go
right.
To my
like
project management page. Maybe that's.
Oh, I think this page. Yeah, I think this page looks different when you don't have a project. And so I have like projects. I'm not sure what it's gonna say there.
Create a new.
Create new ones. Yeah, you can see this like that. So you can create new projects there on that page. So I think that view looks this. Go to my create new projects. Yeah, it says that right there. I
Right.
guess that's what
So
it
then
says.
you'll fill out some stuff there and you'll be on your way.
Yeah. Yeah. So what it looks like to create a project is not the most user-friendly form. And I get like one of the things here, Gary, is like the design of the site is usually made to like optimizing the user friendliness of these forms is not very helpful for us because there's not that many people are going to face it, right? But yeah, it's not. I think it could be a better form. But that's what
But
it
you
looks
fill
like.
out this, I mean, just to kind of keep it at a high level, you fill out this form, you click create.
Yeah,
it
we have
creates
and you fill out the form and create the project.
resources for you, and then you have to, a bunch of stuff that you have to kind of properly.
This is like a
configure.
GDPR compliance thing. If erasure is supported, whether you want notifications when people leave the project. Am I still screen sharing? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
no,
URLs, terms of
this is
use.
helpful.
Yeah.
This is really helpful. I mean, I think I should print this out, or like make a PDF of that, and and we can talk as a group about how we should be filling that out and structuring the project.
And you can edit the fields after you fill them out.
Sure. But I mean, certainly, like those are a bunch of specific questions that we should have good answers for. That's totally cool. And
one of the things to keep in mind is that you'll need to have a sense of like what your terms of use are. Like,
that's what I love, in the sense that like we've been talking with multiple multiple organizations about this, but it's time to just get really concrete about some specifics like that exactly, and yeah. So
let me go back to screen sharing because I'll share more stuff.
Okay, please.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really helpful in terms of you're giving me great things to take back to the group and say, yeah, like these are the details, because we'll be endlessly talking about how we can improve the data processing, or other things about this, and not some of the kind of nitty gritty about organizing the project.
So yeah, this is another section, is to understand that projects are going to have the APIs all work immediately. So some people don't understand that you can just create it and it starts working right away. You don't have to apply for approval before you can start using it.
Sure.
But it's going to have a user cap. I think it's 20. So there's that user cap, and it's not going to be listed. It's going to be listed with it's not going to be listed on like publicly visible. If someone clicks like add data, it's not going to show up on that page. So it's not going to be, but if you give someone the link, they can go to it and they see it. There'll be like a warning box that says this project is under development, only use if because it hasn't gone through a review process.
Sure.
And so we do have this review process, and instead of doing this internally, we make an open process, and it's consensus driven. So it's not like a specific number of votes or a specific time frame. It's similar to Wikipedia's review process of where we invite people to weigh in, and then if it looks like enough people have, and then the discussion often progresses. So this occurs in the forums. So you make a post in the forums, and there's information in the forums about activity reviews. There's activity guidelines. So like be aware of like these different guidelines, and they're good to think about. Some of them seem obvious in retrospect, but it doesn't hurt to look them over.
Matt, I have a question, if I can. Are there best practices around managing technical support once a project starts? So you have people, you've got it going, you've got it approved, you have people now trying to upload their data, they start to run into some issues, that we all know about very well. And obviously the person who starts the project has some channels to communicate with them because they wouldn't have started the project if they didn't. But those start to merge with support for open humans, because where does the problem really lie, and et cetera, et cetera. So what have you seen? Have you seen anything that you can advise around, do you start a new Slack channel around your project, and are you and Bastian in there, or, how do these things get, what do you think is a good idea of how to think about it?
Well, usually like few people only a fraction of people that experience an issue actually let you know about it. So I don't have any specific answers, but I can point to things that could be used. So one is I've opened up the quantified flu page as an example. Activity pages should all have a button to message project. That sends a message to the project coordinator with your project member ID, which I guess I've re-identified myself here because you can see my project member ID, which is supposed to be private to me, but it's okay. This is going to send a message, and then the setup of the project is going to have an email address that this goes to. And so that's one way to, and it's not going to identify me like by name, but instead by the random identifier. So they'll know which person, like in a de-identified way, is messaging them. And then you as a project manager can send a message to the de-identified, random ID person back to them. Now, often in practice, what happens is people just sign these with their names. They actually don't care about preserving their privacy in their report of a bug, and I'll get like all sorts of details about them. But in theory, it is possible to contact the project and let them know about something without identifying yourself, like by Open Humans username and other identity stuff. It's also stuff like Slack, and people are totally free to use other methods to coordinate. It's open-ended. We don't have any other advice or suggestions on that. It's one of those things. Most projects, I might recommend the forums rather than Slack for projects that haven't reached sufficient density to have enough chatter. But yeah, sorry, go on.
The related projects channel used to have a lot of people that were banging on stuff in it. So that's a good place to look for like-minded people who have tried and failed or tried and succeeded to get something up.
And Ben joined late. Ben Carr's a regular at the community meetings.
A regular thorn in Mad's side.
Someone who actually reports issues, which is actually a really good thing.
Can you say what channel that was again, Ben? Because I didn't quite catch it.
It's related-projects.
Okay. In the Slack? I'm not finding it.
But man, it
Did
sounds
you
like
retired?
I think it's moved to activities.
Okay.
Yeah, and our goal with this channel was to try to make something that wasn't specific to anyone, but so different people who are building the activities can ask others for potential support. It looks like there's 92 members in it. Not a lot of traffic recently, but that can always change. There's yeah, you're welcome to check it out.
Morgan, are you on the Slack?
absolutely.
Okay, I'm adding you on that channel. So
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I'm Morgan. Sorry, what was the difference between a study and an activity?
Oh, a study is something that's IRB reviewed. And so if you're not running something IRB reviewed, please describe it as an activity. It will come with a little box that's set at the top that warns people that this was not overseen by a white coat ethics committee.
Sure.
I don't use the phrase white coat, but the point is that like Open Humans treads this line here of like, we don't want people to think that something was IRB reviewed when it wasn't. So because there are some things that are IRB reviewed studies.
Yeah, gotcha. And that was certainly one of the questions that that people had for Bastian yesterday. and I mean, so, you know, one of the reasons that I'm, you know, asking questions for John is that I think he would like to get IRB approval. And he, you know, but this is very different for us in the sense that, like, we get IRB approval to get people into the lab, right? That means that they're, you know, in his case, they're all in Toronto, right? They're not flying in from other countries and potentially other continents, where there are different rules for this. How, I mean, have you had any experience in terms of, you know, because your users could be anywhere, when they get IRB approval, is there kind of like a restriction in terms of who can be a part of that study?
So it's very IRB to IRB, and IRBs are so different.
Sure.
And so usually IRBs are very comfortable with receiving, managing unidentified, de-identified data. So that really helps with getting it through an IRB review, is to be able to tell them that
Gotcha.
you aren't getting their email addresses, which is, you know, like, how do you have accounts without their identity? And the Open Humans gives you that, right? And gives you the storage and stuff, and gives them control. Also helpful stuff for IRBs, GDPR compliance. It's going to help you feel okay with working with your potentially European participants.
Yeah.
It is not possible to guarantee compliance with every international law, and it's also not feasible to actually know exactly which persons where and which laws apply to them. And IRBs, many IRBs are already familiar with that. They've lived in that space already. Sometimes, I guess, if to make an IRB comfortable, you might say, like, please say that you are a US resident or something like that. I would recommend trying to just tell the IRB they're not identified, and you're not even collecting location data, or, like, if you can brag in that way, you can say, like, to keep it private, we don't even know where they are. Like, you know, make it a positive. It's not a bug, it's a feature.
Right.
Yeah, each IRB is different, but you definitely are welcome to open up conversations of, like, here's some concerns the IRB brought. We have experience with other studies that have run, like, stuff through Open Humans, and what they shared with their IRBs, and, like, diagrams, like flowchart diagrams and stuff. So we can help with existing knowledge of navigating that process. Without any guarantees, because each IRB has its own. But it helps the IRB know that other studies already exist that use Open Humans, because that's like
definitely. I mean, that definitely helps, and you know, I think we are expecting that there'll be a certain newfound respect for the collecting data in a post-COVID world. You know, in the sense that, like, we're not having people come into the lab right now, and that's a good thing. And like you said, like, we can still, you know, technically we can do this, and you've got a, you know, a super long history, you know, with what I would call much more kind of like essential data, in the sense of, like, genetics
sensitive
data,
yeah
like that.
I mean, we started with genomes.
Again, if anybody can figure out what, you know, what EEG means, like, I hope they tell me, because, you know, so but we need to treat it like it's medical data, you know, and so that's great. I mean, I
Sebastian's joined.
Oh, hey, great. I mean, I think we could start with less than 20 users. I mean, do people do that in terms of, like, we could?
I can also make exceptions with the cap if needed.
I mean, I don't think we've got more than 20. You know, like, I wouldn't want it to be that big. I would just want some of the developers who, again, like, everybody's home right now. So we've got a very dispersed team. But we could, you know, like, we've got people across the country and across the pond who could be contributing data sets right now. and we could, we could start to, with different kinds of hardware, and we could start to see what issues we're having, and keep it under 20. And I'm just asking in the sense of like, I'm going to go back and say, hey, we could get this started right now, and have it with a project name, have that, have our data types, available, and start figuring out how best to use, the infrastructure. And it's like, as you said, it's like, it's kind of ready to go as soon as you type in, a project name.
One thought occurred to me,
Yeah.
one more thing to note, is that Open Humans enables, and sometimes it's useful to do this and sometimes it's not, a decoupling of the data input and running a study. And so you can work on building like a data input that is not necessarily used by a specific study, and then create specific studies, like one or more, like multiple ones that use that data input. And that's how the continuous glucose monitor data and Dana Lewis's OpenAPS project are set up. So there's actually now 2 CGM data sources. One was the Night Scout, so it's kind of like the Night Scout server can be used to add data. And the other was an Android app that someone's created that's related to OpenAPS. And so those are data inputs, and there's also multiple projects that say you can share the data with the project. So there's data commons projects. There's one for OpenAPS. Like Open Artificial Pancreas System is very specific to people who are fully automated insulin delivery using their own data. And then there's a broader Night Scout data commons that's like for CGM data in general. So that decoupling, I wanted to point out to you, especially if you're talking in terms of like having an IRB reviewed study, you may want to decouple building the data input stuff and then the data use stuff. And that's something that Open Humans enables.
Yeah. So we could get started with the data input issues as a small, say, NeurotechX team. And but we could then use that's working to go get our IRB approval and roll it out to a larger group. And it sounds, I mean, I take it, I mean, again, from the way I see it, it would be easy for us to, we can manage the support of people with their devices on NeurotechX Slack as we have been, and dealing with those things, and then point people here for using the dashboard, and
yeah, it sounds good. It sounds like I've given you hopefully a lot of useful information, and you can feel free to come back with questions. Yeah. Well, we've run well over the hour, but I didn't mean to like suck. I mean, hopefully this was interesting for folks. If anyone else has stuff they wanted to share or ask about, I'd love to take a moment to see if there's any other stuff. I tried to share the notebooks in Voila, Bastian, and there was like no questions. So I think it's more like we have to have notebooks that people are excited to run, and then they actually run them, and then they have questions because it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So maybe in another week or 2 we'll have more on that.
Gary, you're muted.
Gary, you're muted.
Just a moment of feedback, even though we're over time, that other people will probably experience. So I ran a notebook in Voila. Of course, it failed because there's some issue with my data source that I haven't identified yet. And then I went back to edit this notebook. It took me a little while to figure that out, but because even though it's obvious in retrospect. So then you go to edit this notebook. And then as a user, you're asking, okay, but where is the section that I should edit to accommodate the problem in my data source? So I think these are just some challenges for the future of like kind of each Voila is putting another step there, which is good, But then as soon as it breaks, you're kind of one step further away from fixing it. So I don't know, the answer has something to do with what I asked before about the support context, because everybody's is going to break differently, but for the future agenda.
I broke
Yeah.
Voila.
On
I'm
Open
not
Humans?
surprised it was you.
It was your overland. I tried to run overland in Voila. And it just
Mine's
hangs at
crapped out
2.
too.
My broke too.
Yeah, so I think the overland is pretty particular, as like the data set is so big that I'm not even sure whether it's just running out of memory in the virtual machine or whether it's just taking too long to compute. So I will look into it. I noticed the same issue already.
Okay, because it works when I do the edit and run. It works fine. So
Yeah, so
it works really slowly for me, and so maybe Voila is just a little less efficient, and that's enough.
yeah, I mean, we did not have a lot of time to try since I think like it was Monday morning that Tim had made all the upgrades. So when I demoed it live on the Neurotech X call yesterday, it was the first time doing a live demo, and I was very lucky in it actually working. I was like, let's see how this goes. Of like, I've installed it this morning, so let's see whether 4 hours later it's still working.
Okay, well, maybe we'll have more notebooks to explore next week. And so with
say
that,
thanks to Tim for the upgrade.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, he gave us a discount rate. So we did cover his time, but apparently not as much as some other people he charges. So many thanks to Tim for that. So bye all.
Bye everyone.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.